This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and today we're talking about Maitresse from 1976, directed by Barbet Schroeder. RJ, this film's tagline, She will open your eyes.
To what?
After breaking into a house he believes is empty, thief Olivier is caught by the owner, Ariane, who turns out to be a dominatrix, and probably falling for her. Olivier returns periodically, and an impulsive romance blossoms despite Ariane's profession. Soon, Olivier becomes more familiar with her work, even joining in on occasion. However, when he discovers that Ariane has a son, he attempts to fix her, hoping to give her a better life. Is that accurate?
I mean, it's a couple of the broad strokes, but it's not really, right?
Yeah, I feel like
Kinda?
I feel like this fixing of her life because of her son thing is not quite the impetus.
No. Not really. From what I gathered, it was just no, I'll get there. Okay. I'd say it's broad strokes, but not necessarily.
Okay, so this is a movie that I've never seen before this week, and I own on DVD, and this was because of two things. One is for a few of these Barbet Schroeder movies I've seen, I've actually quite liked. I like that Barfly. I like that.
Oh, yes.
I like that single white female, and
yes.
I mean, old General Idi Amin Dada. Come on.
What about Coco?
I haven't seen Coco yet.
Ooh, it's coming up soon, right?
I haven't seen Reversal of Fortune, and then Kiss of Death, though I have seen, and that movie, Pu. And then, but see, this is like that era where Hollywood's acquiring all these foreign directors to come and shape up their American movies. Let them do a little movie, but then soon enough, you're doing Murder by Numbers, and then your career's dead.
Well, for some people.
Right? Yeah. So anywho, I'd never seen this, but also this movie's saucy subject matter. It really it intrigued me. I was kind of like, they don't really make movies like this. These frank depictions of sexuality, strange sex, BDSM. And it's like, what's this all about? And what's this? Gerard Depardieu?
He's a big deal in France, apparently, right?
I'm not sure if he still is. I don't think he is, but at one point he was quite the sex symbol in the world.
Whoa, why?
I don't know. I've always heard about this Depardieu, but every time I see him, he's always like, this guy, this big old hunk.
Is he though? He's a big dude for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, look at him now. I've only seen 4 movies with him. Let's take a look.
Seen a couple.
Oh, he was in Branagh's Hamlet, and I don't remember him at the meeting of Joyous Death. Is that the? That is that one I watched during Halloween. It's like the haunted house movie. It's like directed by Buñuel's son. That was actually pretty decent. I guess he was in there. Very young though. And the movie CQ.
What?
Directed by Roman Coppola himself.
What about Last Holiday with Queen Latifah?
Nope. I missed that one.
I got that one. What about 102 Dalmatians?
See? I'm missing
I got 5 with this big bad boy. Oh, yeah.
So this lummox, this beefy man, he plays this guy, Olivier,
something like that.
So Oliver. The movie opens up actually with this great handheld shot. It's kind of on the sloppier side. It's got that cinema verite vibe, and I was immediately like, oh, I miss contemporary filmmaking so much because we watch all these stodgy black and white movies so many times, and they just they're so so perfectly shot, really lit, and this is just using natural lighting, and it feels like something you'd watch now.
Sure.
So I was like, ooh, this guy getting off his bike in downtown Paris or whatever and going to meet a buddy. And I just was immediately oh, thank God. I don't know. Maybe I'm a meathead for that, but I was just oh, good. This feels like a real, 1976. It seems so yesterday.
Yes.
So the movie's got this really cool little setup though, like because you have no idea what any of these characters' relationships are going to be. Oliver just shows up. He meets an old friend, and he's like, "Oh, I see you're in books," and you're like, "Oh." You have no idea where this guy's come out of. Kind of knowing, because like, you know, you read the back of the box, you kind of know, well, I know that Deeper Dude's got to be like some sort of like ex-con or like somebody who's just like got out and he's trying to start a life over, and he meets this friend who's, oh, maybe he's like a writer and how he's doing books. But oh no, he has this big stack of books that he's just trying to sell to people randomly at doors to see who's home and who isn't, because they're breaking enter artists, B&E boys.
B&E boys. So on the Criterion channel, there's a 15-minute thing with Barbet Schroeder where he kind of talks about this movie, not always, but he does mention that. And he said he just really liked the idea of someone being able to enter another person's apartment. He's like, so that's where I kind of came from. He's like, I just really like the idea of going into other people's apartments. That's it.
I get that.
And he's like, yeah. And then he's like, what would you find? Something crazy?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like, I mean, that's as good an idea as any, as for a kernel of an idea. So we get to see them kind of just like attempting this, I guess this tactic, buzzing in, trying to sell these books that nobody wants. I can only imagine someone knocking on my door and saying, "Hey, you want to buy some art books?"
Isn't that what you do pretty much?
I get to talk to the people who write those books. And then you go, I don't know if anyone would want this, but I don't know why anyone would want books at all anymore.
Good point.
It's true. So yeah, we get this nice little setup where they go up to this random apartment, and this woman answers, and she's really kind of flustered, and then she just invites them in, and you're like, what the hell's up with this? She's like, well, I'll buy all your books if you just help me with this problem, because her bathtub's overflowing, and they're able to fix it, and say, oh, hey, you should tell your neighbor, like, there's probably going to be water pouring in through the floor, which is a good point. Very considerate for scumbags. And she's like, no, it's fine. Just like an old woman lives down there, the landlord. She's not here though right now. And of course they're like, oh yeah, cool. That means it's empty and we can pilfer. So they come back. You get to see them scheme, trying to go through the front door, but then realize, hey, let's just go outside and through a window. So they do that. And then they start kind of climbing around through closets and through darkened spaces. And then you just get like this kind of this spooky image of dimly lit leather and S&M equipment. Which, I mean, like, if you like stumble across this, it would be a little like, Well,
that time I borrowed those movies from you, like when I had to, those DVDs. When I came into your house, there was a very weird aesthetic, like a lot of rhinestones, a lot of studs, and a lot of leather. A lot of leather, Jarrett. It was weird.
Playing a lot of Willie DeVille in the background.
Yeah, there was a strange ambiance in there, but it wasn't like threatening. It was just like uncomfortable.
And then you asked me what size, and I said party size.
Right. That means it's working.
So RJ, how many dudes do you have in your cage?
Like at any given time or at this moment?
Right now.
I don't know, like 2.
Yeah.
I think.
So in the mussing around, they come across Depardieu comes across a cage with a man in it, which is like, what is all this about? And at this point, I had this thought. I'm like, I wonder if Oliver here is going to wind up in a cage at the end of the movie. I was kind of thinking that might be a thing, but they didn't go that direction at all. Not in a literal way.
No, I'm glad you brought that up though, because I thought of 2 things. I thought of Pulp Fiction. And I was like, I wonder if Quentin is a fan of this. And then I thought of one of our friend of the show's favorite, Oliver Granger, favorite movie.
My next note. Because when the staircase comes, the mechanical staircase comes lowering down, and then we have someone walking down with boots, and you're like, what the hell is this? Yeah, it goes into that Martyrs territory.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. I'm sure Oliver Granger will be thrilled that it's being brought up again, especially because I know he's looking forward to this movie. And now hearing that it is essentially the Martyrs prequel, I'm sure he'll be just ecstatic. So continue.
Yeah. So they come across this scene. There's a dog. There's a nice little
Texas.
Texas, the Doberman.
Yeah, he's a Doberman. I think it's a Doberman.
Yeah, I think it's a
Pretty
Doberman.
sure.
Yeah, and so of course they're like now like the whole they're being caught by the dog and they're afraid of the dog and she comes down the woman from upstairs. And she's like, what the hell are these two doing? What are you clowns doing? She doesn't think too much of it. She's got her dog, and she invites a man into the house, and she's like, hey, I need some help in here. And so she gets Oliver to come and help out. And what does the help mean in this setting? Well, so she is a dominatrix, and she's kind of abusing this man.
Sure.
This client of hers, and she wants Oliver to piss on his face, which he does. We don't see it. It's all close-ups, shots of the two of them, and we don't know exactly what's going on below the neckline. But this does build to a passionate kiss because it gets them real hot and bothered. But the one thing I made a note right here though, because I've been noticing this too in the last few weeks in a post-COVID world. Buddy here didn't wash his hands after pissing on that guy's face and proceeded to touch his own.
Well, I also made a similar note, not from the piss scene, but later in a different scene, you're shown her wall of whips and like sticks and stuff, all like leather things she'll like poke people with or whip them with, and she uses one and then she goes, hangs it up and grabs another one. And in my mind I was like, I really hope she's disinfecting this shit in between people. But as actually again, as Barbet Schroeder mentioned in that 15-minute short, he talks about going out with dominatrix because apparently this movie made him a hero in the dominatrix scene. And he's like, they took me to clubs, and he was like, this was pre-AIDS. He's like, so the clubs were pretty wild. So I have a feeling that if this movie is pre-AIDS also, she probably wasn't disinfecting those leather straps, right?
You're probably okay though. It's fine.
Yeah, sure.
It's all good. So now Oliver's he's got a taste. He's got a taste for this lifestyle and this kink, this like powerful, sexy woman who's like into deviance. I mean, what's not to love? So
sure,
she pays him $200 and tells him and his buddy to fuck off. But he's like, no, I want to hang out. I want to hang out with you. I'll buy you dinner with the money you just paid me. He goes and tells his buddy to fuck off and gives him the $200 to get him to leave. And then they have their little date. And their love begins to blossom. They have a little bit too much to drink. They go around the town before sunrise. They find themselves on a hill at like 6 a.m. as the bells chime, which Oliver mentions this is the time they kill horses at. And because he used to work at a slaughterhouse, just planting a little seed for later,
Sure.
And so soon enough he's now living with her, and she seems to be on board with this. She seems to find something attractive and raw about this man who might not be able to be conquered, and he gets to come along for the ride. And it's like the rest of the movie, kind of like from a plot standpoint, is kind of him being introduced to her life. She's got a maid that kind of comes in to like take care of the house, who wears black all the time. She handles the phone. She knows what she does for a living. There's there's an upstairs downstairs metaphor that's going on here, RJ, that made me laugh about Parasite again.
Yep.
And then there's an obvious thing about the use of white and black. There's like with her like Ariane's hair's blonde, and she's always usually wearing white clothes, but when she's going to work, she starts putting on that black wig and black leather gear with capes and gloves and such.
What does black symbolize, Jarrett?
I don't know. It's just the opposite of the white.
So are you saying this is some kind of contrast?
I don't know. That's not I don't get paid the big bucks to come up with these ideas.
Okay, that's fair.
These depths. So anyway, so she's at work, and we kind of know where this is going to probably go eventually. This Oliver guy seems like a real hothead, a bit of a beast, and doesn't really take kindly to this. trying to think where I want to go with this at this point. Obviously, there'll be one thing that anyone who's watched this movie will be like, "Oh, RJ, oh poor RJ." So, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah, but we get a taste of her lifestyle. We get actual scenes of real sadomasochists, masochists going in to get worked on by their woman, who is not actually played by Ariane, who is Boule Augier. Is that how Boule Augier?
Yeah.
That's who is Barbet Schroeder's wife, as a matter of fact, too.
Yeah, I think the way he says it, it's kind of like Bill. It's like Bill. Like the way he's talking, but it's like with a friend. He's like, Billy.
Billy?
Yeah, Billy. So
Billy.
That's how he talks. No, yeah, he mentions that they got a real one for like those real scenes because it was like
they didn't trust her with that hammer going into the penis.
Well, I mean, is there a wrong way to do it?
Probably. There's definitely a wrong way, I think.
Well, you'll have to show me sometime.
Okay, I promise. I'll definitely do that. So yeah, we get to these very well photographed scenes of men in gimp masks and tied up in leather things, writhing around on the floor to her boots and being told what to do. There's actually the one thing that is actually really great about this movie too is the cinematographer Nestor Almendros, who shot movies like Days of Heaven and Sophie's Choice, a bunch of Romer movies. Also shot this movie and General Idi Amin Dada. This movie's like low-key amazing looking because I did notice some people had taken some of the shots of this movie, turned them black and white, and they look absolutely amazing. This movie looks better in black and white than it does in color, but the movie has this really cool tone to it when they're switching between the upstairs and downstairs. And as well, I discovered, looking up little things about this movie, the costume designer, who I don't know costume designer people or anything like that, but they became like a very noteworthy person for Chattel. Yeah. So I mean, anyway, some people are mentioning this, like this fine design
fashion?
work. Yeah, fashion designer. Did all the costumes, did all the leather stuff, but also did the like regular clothes as well. But yeah, not jumping the gun. We get a bit where there's this sort of element of this Gautier character, the horse, the man, the rich client who's like getting fleeced, and Oliver doesn't like this. It bothers him, and he thinks he's going to do her a favor by getting this guy off her back, always going to her because she's not going to him, and he goes and kind of strong arms him, extracts a bunch of money, which of course fucks up the free ride that they are all enjoying off of this like old man who liked to be taken advantage of, I guess. And it was part of the role play.
It was the long game with him.
Right. Yeah, it was a whole play, and he just overstepped his bounds because he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just a lowly B&E man. But he takes this money, being very proud of himself. He goes and gets drunk. And he's just, for whatever reason, at 6 a.m, he stops by the slaughtering house. He goes to the abattoir, and we see a very real scene of a horse getting the treatment, getting shot in the head and dropped to the floor, hung up by the stirrups, and then bled out into a quite a striking scene, a full gallop this dead, dying horse makes as it sprays blood everywhere. I do think that this is, I'm not sure if it's a homage to, but Rainier Fassbinder's got a scene like this in one of his movies. Whatever, Year of the 13 Moons or something like that, where it has a horse. And Schroeder is also a producer on Fassbinder movies, so there's that. And this movie does have a real Fassbinder vibe to it. The kind of like this low key kind of characters, just drama, a lot of European interiors. I was thinking about that a lot watching this. I was also thinking about a guy that I was mentioning several months ago in our preambles, Alan Robe Garrett, who made these art house French low key movies about S&M culture. He was an aspiring dom himself, but he got out dommed by his own wife.
Ooh.
Yeah.
How's that happen?
Well, I mean, it turns out he was like secretly, he always wanted to be a submissive, and his wife understood that and let him think, yes, honey, yes, you're the dom, yes, yes, you are. And then he made all these movies to please her, and then now she's like a full-time practicing trainer of dominatrixes and whatnot. So I was thinking about that. This European thing, they're a lot more comfortable with their sexuality. RJ,
Is there like a school that she works at, or is it like individual lessons?
I think there's some sort of like coursework. It's kind of like doing the Werner Herzog Rogue filmmaking class or master filmmaking that you can pay David Lynch to show you how to, like, I don't know, make apples about talking apple movies. I don't know.
So they probably went to online now too, right?
Probably.
Right.
It's probably a good idea to work on, like, I don't know, when to shove pokers up butts and where to run it across the buttocks properly and how to properly shame somebody into, whatever.
Yeah.
And then this movie, it kind of wraps up. She takes off on him and he's looking for her and he does find her eventually. They get into this car, which is like an ongoing power struggle of the relationship of who's really in charge, and they try to drive simultaneously while she's grinding onto his lap and probably doing a little bit more than just grinding.
Jarrett.
And then we have a crash. And and this movie kind of reminds me again of Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend, which friend of the show, Justin Peterson, just watched this week and was like, this movie is bizarre. This movie has a sort of ending where I'm kind of like, huh, that's the go home spot, huh? That's how they're wrapping it up. And I was thinking, like, are they dead? Like,
he thinks it's a beautiful ending, Jarrett.
Is that all he says though?
No, he actually does talk about it. So like,
okay.
He says that he thinks the ending. He said he thinks it's beautiful because they found a compromise where they're both equally in control because she's controlling the steering wheel, he's controlling the gas and brakes, but they're both also equally out of control because neither one is in controlling the entire car. So he actually,
but they also might die.
Yeah, and he said that's fine. He's like, because that's life. It's like, it's uncertainty. But he says he thinks it's a beautiful, happy ending because they finally found a way of being kind of on equal grounds.
Okay.
And he thinks that's what the whole movie is about.
What did he? Well, I don't know. I'll ask him. What did he have to say about the horse adventure? But I'll
comments on it.
I'm sure he does. But I will say that I do like this movie. I think that it is. It looks great. It's super simple, like story on the whole. It's probably on the long side. I feel like I'm not sure exactly what you would do to quote tighten it up, because it's, I don't know, everything that's there in the movie kind of belongs, but I don't know if I'd be like, rushing back to revisit it anytime soon. But I'm glad I finally did get this one out of the way since I've had it for a number of years. But I don't know, like sometimes I like these European 70s movies quite a bit. That's kind of been the track record so far. Like, look, it's no Lost Honor of Katharina Blum or anything like that, but no, I thought I liked it. But I am very curious, RJ, to hear what your thoughts are on Maitresse.
What do you Jarrett, what are some likes, some dislikes, any strong opinions of this or that, anything that might, like, you'd be like, this is a movie you should watch and this is a movie you should maybe not watch? What do you think?
If I were to, would I recommend this movie to you?
Yeah.
No, I would not. Is
there a list of reasons, or?
Well, there's one very obvious one.
Yeah. So
the explicit depiction of horse death, which I will say that this at least has some excuse because it was probably going to happen no matter what, and it wasn't for surely for the art of cinema. Though it was used for that purpose, but it wasn't like, oh, we just killed this animal just to get that shot. It's not like a Andrei Rublev style horse death where you're like, oh yeah, they fucked that horse up real bad. Now they have to put a bullet in its head to put it out of its misery. This was like, no, it's at a slaughterhouse, and there's a purpose to it, but it is also extremely graphic and explicit. And so to many, it doesn't probably serve that much purpose on the whole of the movie, other than, I guess, I mean, it's a very well photographed animal killing.
Sure.
But beyond that, it's like, I'm not sure exactly what the metaphor is. And if and there's no other way to have done it.
He does have a claim for the metaphor. So I'll just cut in for a second. We'll get this matzo ball out of here just to begin, and then I can really dig into the movie. However, this is a big aspect of it. So I think people understand that I'm not a huge fan of animal violence, cruelty, or any such inclusion of them in movies. A few weeks ago, we had Rules of the Game, where they showed the hunt scene, and it was like to depict classes and all that horse shit. And I was talking about how like the use of animals for metaphors for other things is like such baloney, because it's like in that one they talk about how is like this, they're making a statement about war, and it's like, well, that's like making a statement about animal cruelty, but going into a battered woman's home and start beating up women, it's like you're misplacing your anger there. Anyways, I've talked about this stuff a lot, so I won't hammer it too much. I do know, as you've pointed out, we have that cognitive dissonance where we don't need to know where our food comes from. I, however, do work I have worked in an industry somewhat similar to the means of production, I guess, in the
supply chain.
The supply chain. It is early on, so it's I have worked in agriculture. In the farm aspect with ranchers and cattlemen growing and raising these cattle. And I will say that they are some of the more, like, a lot of ranchers take better care of their cattle than anyone would expect. It's just afterwards. It's always the slaughterhouse, right? That's where everything comes to a head. And my biggest thing, Jared, is maybe there's a more humane way to do these things, but that's neither here nor there. So the horse scene. One thing, I don't know if you ever knew this. I have been in a slaughterhouse in Argentina, and I was sprayed with blood, and I didn't like it very much.
Oh, yeah.
And it was
wild.
It was a pretty off-putting experience for me, and it was one that I don't like to talk about.
So you're not going to be driving out to Fort McLeod to the horse plant where they ship off to France.
No, I will not be. So it's not something that I enjoy. And so when the scene started, I was like, I was like, I know exactly where this is going. I've seen it in real life. And I was like, I don't like this very much. So I kind of, I actually did a thing I haven't done in many years where I blocked the screen because I didn't trust myself. I put my hand up and I was like, nah. I heard the noise, I heard the commotion, and then when I looked up, he was leaving, and I was like, whatever happened, I'm glad I didn't watch it. So anyways, there's that. So it's kind of like you said, at least it wasn't done for the form of art, like, say, Rules of the Game or Andrei Rublev, where it's like they're
an Alejandro Jodorowsky movie where they're
just blowing up
blizzards.
For the sake of art. And that's why I always say art isn't real, so it's all baloney. It's like, I'm sure the horse meat was used. Does that make it better? I don't know. I don't have the answers either. Anyways, I wasn't a fan. But here's what your boy Barbet Schroeder had to say.
Okay.
Apparently, what's his name? Gerard Depardieu worked in a horse packing plant similar to this. And Barbet Schroeder talks about how in France, he was like, I know the American audiences, they didn't like this because they don't eat horse. He's like, but in France, we do. He's like, there's butcher shops for horses. He's like, so it didn't, he's like, if it was cows, maybe they would have understood. His mind, he was saying, and this is a direct quote, he said, I wanted him to identify with the victim and eat the flesh of the horse. So I think that this is kind of similar to the Rules of the Game thing where they're like, well, we killed all the animals to show what the loss of human life in the war was like. And it's like, this is that metaphor stuff. It's like, well, he's taking on the role of the victim, and he's identifying with it. That's why he's eating the horse. And it's like, I guess, but I think this movie could do without that, Jarrett. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that scene is unnecessary. What do you think? Hearing about that, do you think that makes it like a bit better?
Yeah, I feel like it's a stretch.
I agree.
Yeah.
So anyways, no one, I don't like it. No one would have thought I did, but that's his rationale for it. He said he's identifying with the victim.
Right.
Whatever. That aside, we have the other aspect, which is the whole movie, BDSM and dominatrixing, which I've said many times. My personal form of kink is abstinence only. Nobody should be naked ever and doing anything of any sexual form. So this movie is a double header for me. But I will say this, Jarrett, and I think I'm going to surprise you.
Okay.
I actually didn't mind Matrice.
Well, that's good. But
yeah,
I would stand by. I would not recommend this movie to you because But I mean, I don't think there's anything that like bad about it. I just don't know if there'd be anything for you necessarily in it.
Right. Well, yeah. So I see what you mean with all that, and I get it. Even though I don't, I won't even say like it's just not my orientation is this kind of stuff.
Well,
so I don't really get it. But it's like, but it's like I can watch like an alien movie. It's like that shit's not even real, and it's like I get this. So like, you know, I know what I'm talking about. So anyways, all that aside, I actually didn't mind the story between them. I actually really like the setup where he's like, you just go into people's apartments. He's like, what if you just stumbled upon a dominatrix?
Right.
And then you got swept up into the life. And it could be a dominatrix. It could be martyrs.
It could be like, whatever. Or Don't Breathe. Remember Don't Breathe?
Yeah. So I like the setup to that. I think it's pretty good. And I do actually kind of like their, it's kind of like a Harold and Maude story, Jarrett, where it's like, they kind of happen upon each other and they do get along, but it's not quite like, it's like, is it going to work? Because at first it seems like there's the obvious attraction and the interest where he offers her like kind of a, something like a distance from her professional life. So he's kind of like a normal
romantic relationship.
A romantic relationship where she has her professional thing, which is something else completely.
Right.
For him, he gets offered like the thrill of something a little bit different, right? And it's like, yeah, that is kind of a nice pull. And then like later on when he doesn't like the bigger character, I feel like it switches his thing from like intrigue to possession almost, where it's a control thing, right? Which is like the whole movie. And that's where he talks about the ending. He's like, it's a balancing of control because her job is to control other people, but he is this classic macho guy where it's like, you control your women's, I guess. So it's this like back and forth. I get it. It's nice.
Even though it's like she makes all the money and pays for everything.
Oh yeah, totally. But there's those guys exist in real life all the time.
Yeah,
like
they do.
Go on Reddit for an hour and you'll see men and women that it's both sides of it. Where
both sides.
People. Well, have you ever seen those like things where like men talk about women who do it, but women talk about men too? Where it's like the flip side, where a woman will be like, if a guy can't buy me dinner or something, whatever, and then people will comment, they'll be like, buy your own dinner, you poor ass B, or whatever. it goes back and forth. But no, I did like the romantic story that came up in this. And this movie's very long. It's almost 2 hours, but it actually didn't feel that long to me, which is nice.
It was easy to watch.
It was easy to watch. Yeah. At an hour in, I did stop and I went upstairs and I made a sandwich, as Barbet Schroeder probably did.
Yeah.
And then I just kept watching.
Yeah, that's about the same for me. I think I around the hour mark, I'm like, I'm going to hit pause and I'm going to come back and finish this bad boy up, have a little bit of a nosh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I took a little break in between, not because I was bored, but just because I was like, I'll take a little break. And so, yeah, even though it's almost 2 hours, it kind of flew by pretty nice. I do like the story. I don't personally want to be involved in the activities depicted in this movie, but whatever. And it is kind of cool. Barbet Schroeder was talking about how he was like, I became like a champion for these people. He's like, because he was like, I was just at a bar in New York one time and some lady recognized me. And then he's like, and then I went out with all the dominatrix. And he's like, it was pretty fun. And that's where he talks about pre-AIDS and stuff like that. But
Right.
yeah, I think he even mentions, he's like, it wasn't totally my intention for it. He's like, I just thought it was kind of a cool idea. He's like, if it helps people for it, he's like, even better, whatever. And I was like, that's kind of a nice thing to say. That like, he's like, I wasn't doing it for any reason. He's like, but if people enjoy it, he's like, what are you gonna do? Nice. So it's a cool little story. I do think a lot of it looks good too. Like, there's one, I took some screenshots I sent you where she's like, descending to the stairway.
So good.
I sent you like 3, but I have a series of I think 7 where it's her starting from the top, making her way all the way down. It's awesome. It looks so nice.
What makes that shot so great is she never looks at the viewer. That's why it's good. If she looked, it would have been shit and it ruined it. But no, the fact that she never breaks her movement, her dedication. She's like, I'm going to work. And then I love the way though, like even like her hands linger at the top. Like it's so well staged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good. So that shot looks awesome. There's a lot of cool stuff in this, like cool shots similar to that. There's some things that like I don't understand, and like it's just like cultural things. Like I remember when we were doing the 400 blows like Truffaut thing with all the Anton Coilette stuff, where it's like French dinner. They just have like shit all over the table. It's like, here's a bucket of like fruit. Here's like a wheel of cheese. Here's like just meat. And then you just go like there's that scene where he's just going in like with a knife and just taking a pull off of each one, like buffet style. Mm-hmm. And like, I didn't recognize a single piece of food that he was eating. I was like, what is all this shit?
French
like,
cuisine,
I don't know
my friend.
French cuisine. And I was like, it's such a weird thing to like kind of pull out, but I was like, this isn't how us Western North Americans eat dinner. And I was like, and that I'm not mad or anything. It's just
I don't
like
see a single ham sandwich on that table with a nice French's mustard.
Where's all your pepperoni? You need a clock of pepperoni and some mustard.
Your cuisine gets that big yellow bottle.
Big yellow mustard? Hell yeah. So that stuff always throws me off. I was just like, what are they eating? And then like one of her like dominatrix things is like a stretcher where it pulls your arms and legs. And I was like, fuck, I could use one of those just to like crack my body. Because I've been like sitting on couches so much for the last 3 weeks that like my body's just like stiff. I've been doing like stretching and yoga. I was like, when I saw that, I legitimately was like, fuck, I wish I had that just to like get a pull,
Right.
But yeah, it's Matrice. I'm probably surprising people. I thought it was all right. Like, I like the story itself. Yeah, the horsing, not very good. But I don't even know. Not nice. I don't even know what to do anymore. It's just it's a part of cinema. I'll never like it, and I'm sure people have had their fill with me talking about it.
At least it's not the 70s anymore, when I feel like animal death like really reached its epoch. I feel like we've flattened that curve of like animal death.
I hope so, film. And unfortunately, it's been brought up a couple times, but I do know that that movie Weekend features a pretty grisly scene with a pig. So that's a Criterion spine, isn't it? Like it 600 or something.
Something to look forward to.
I hope so. Someone get the timestamp for me so I can skip that. But yeah, Matrice, not bad. Yeah.
Well, good. You want to hear about who hates Maitresse?
Sure. Whatever.
Well, there's a really, really long 1-star review by somebody that apparently is very much into the BDSM lifestyle, and they talk about how the movie is sexist. Would you like to hear this? It's very long.
I mean, is it good?
Well, we'll find out. So this is Monica, and they write,
I got her.
I was looking forward to this as there are very few feature films around that explore BDSM with a female in the dominant role. Unfortunately, this film is sexist and prejudiced against the idea that a woman in a sexually dominant role is natural or acceptable. The premise of the story is that there's a woman who gets paid by men to dominate them in all kinds of degrading and painful ways. One day, two men come to her door to try to sell her stuff, and because of something she says, they decide that a burglary of the apartment directly under hers is a great idea. Only it turns out that the apartment is where she entertains her clients. For some completely inexplicable reason, she starts a romantic relationship with one of her would-be burglars. I can see why he might be fascinated by her. In my experience, men are often interested when they find out a woman is into kinky stuff. But why is she interested in him? The guy is her would-be burglar, is very possessive, seems to be more interested in dominating sexually than in submitting sexually, which doesn't seem to be compatible with her sexual tastes, and doesn't trust her, keeps disrespecting her boundaries, is completely financially dependent on her, and doesn't seem to be trying to do anything about that. To me, it seems like he's exactly the sort of guy that would put most women off. But this film doesn't really care about the female perspective. It never looks at what she might want from a man. So instead, what we get is this male fantasy of dominating a dominant woman who secretly wants to submit, but doesn't yet know it herself. I get why this fantasy might be attractive just to some men, but what the fuck? This film is trying for a certain amount of realism in how it portrays BDSM. The BDSM scenes aren't even particularly titillating, so peddling this kind of fantasy as realistic is basically rape apologism. In fact, there's even a scene of the two of them role-playing a rape fantasy, and then later in the film there's a scene that is flat-out rape. This is true. Even that apparently is not enough to put her off him. Seriously? If you need more proof of the film's sexist tendencies, how about the scene in which he slaps her, then she slaps him back immediately afterwards, and then he says, "You'll never do that to me again, understood?" It's a shame, as this film is very beautifully made and not at all prejudiced against BDSM, only about women knowing what they want and being in dominant roles, hot roles, eyes. But the sexism really disgusted me. So, my question is, are there any feature films about BDSM that don't peddle the woman secretly wants to submit theory when it comes to female dominant BDSM? I can't answer that question, but and then she goes on saying, I have a friend who is into that side of things, and she says that basically all the films about dominant women tend to peddle this. I only know of one film that doesn't, and it's not a proper BDSM film, rather just a PG romance where the humorous dynamic is a bit BDM-ish. If you know of any, tell me.
I'm sure their friend goes to a different high school and lives in Canada. If you get my meaning. Yeah, I know a movie that doesn't peddle to the, what did they say, the female aspect of being controlled. Was that it?
Woman secretly wants to submit theory in a BDSM film.
Yeah, I got an answer for you, Jarrett. What about Cruising? Not a woman in sight.
No, not a woman in sight.
So there's your answer, big dog. Monica's like kind of she's a Polish girl in her 30s living in the UK. Her films, like, she's got a lot of stuff, but just like not very many high or low rated. But she only has 3 5-star films: Children of Men, Pride and Prejudice from 1995, and a movie called Hater from 2014. From a director called Vishal Bhardwaj.
Okay.
Don't know what that is. And then a couple half-star films like Magic Mike and Jai Ho. So
okay. You got any thoughts on Monica's comments?
I don't think I could even begin to comment on that stuff. The only thing that, like, I don't know anything about doesn't like the way that some of it's depicted, because like the one thing that she said was like it wasn't even kinky enough, and it was like, well, I mean,
titillating. It wasn't very titillating.
I mean, when you look at my perspective, this thing's like over the top titillating.
There you go. You were too titillated.
Too titillated. When that guy gets his dick nailed to a board, I was crawling up the walls.
Well, that's the opposite of titillation. Unless you're kind of like, oh baby, I need that in my life. I need another hole in my dick. I
mean, I could use one.
Well, there's a way. No, I think I think there's some interesting points. I mean, I don't know. Like, sometimes I do wonder if when people complain about characters not doing what they want in a movie, if that is a problem. Though there is like the full on like rape scene that is completely off camera. because we get to see like a reaction to him, like I'm going to have you in front of your clients, and she's like, no, you're not, and then he does, like that's the implication, and then it's like that's fine, we're going to move on with our day. It's like Jesus. I mean, not all like sexual dynamics are always positive ones in any like long-term relationship. I'm sure there's probably weirdnesses that people just don't talk about, and they move along with their life because the human experience is wide, which is something that some people want to deny. But obviously, there's times where crimes actually are committed too. But yeah. Anyway, Thembo Crossing New Horizons writes 1 star. Missionary position storytelling and filming techniques accompany what the filmmakers surely considered, quote, controversial subject matter. Still looking for a great or even just good BDSM movie?
Cruising. There you go.
Well, that's not quite.
Well, Thembo Crossing New Horizons, that's an Animal Crossing joke, Jarrett.
I see.
If you weren't sure. Big Nintendo person. Hey, they have just been watching all of the Star Trek films, Jarrett.
What?
Let's see what they gave some ratings to these Star Trek films. All right. Okay, wait. Well, like that's too far back. Okay, it starts at The Voyage Home. They gave 4 stars. And then they watched Final Frontier, 2 stars. And then number 6, Undiscovered Country, 3 stars. Generations, 4 stars.
They also said that Blade Runner was a 2-star movie, a racist, misogynistic tour through a setting you could probably make a halfway decent movie in if you tried.
Like the original Blade Runner?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. This person's bio is lesbian ace, trans NB, they, them, polyam, subby AF, little AF, socialist AF, nerdy AF, loyal AF. My girlfriends are cooler than me, they say. 0 5-star films, many 1-star films. Many 1-star films.
Got one more here for you.
Okay.
From Sigmeme.
I see him.
The acting from the 2 leads was fantastic. The sterile sets and grotesque costumes were great, but those were the only things holding this together for me. I never felt like the central romance was believable, or that either of the 2 characters were remotely likable or at least interesting. A dry snooze fest sprinkled with graphic nudity and shocking BDSM scenes to keep the viewer awake. I know this movie has its fans, and good for them, but I really didn't see much in this one.
I don't see much in them. JK. Bio says, I really like horror, monsters, and Asian movies. Hey, remember when I was talking about the cable guy earlier?
Yep.
That testimonial when Ben Stiller's like, I think they were Asian. They were speaking Asian. It's high quality comedy, Jarrett. High quality. Here's some, their favorite movies are Taxi Driver, Cure, Tetsuo the Iron Man, and Inland Empire.
Ouch.
That's like 5-star films are lots of David Lynch, but Inland Empire. They just gave Parasite 5 stars. 5 stars.
Parasite 5 stars in what?
John Wick 3. 5 stars. The House That Jack Built. 5 stars. Oh dear.
Oh my god.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That's a Jarrett pick. If I ever saw one. Ichi the Killer. 5 stars, Jarrett.
Do you agree with that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Cool. I mean, I thought they had very good chemistry. They were both really good acting in this, and I don't know. I thought they were. I've seen some people describe this as a like almost a romantic comedy, which I find which I didn't quite get that vibe.
I mean, that's
from.
a little generous.
Yeah, it's not shot like a comedy, I guess. Which doesn't add to that much, I guess, to me. When I think of a French comedy, I think of that. But when I see people, I'm like, I wasn't really laughing watching the movie. I wasn't slapping my knee, busting a gut.
Yeah, I mean, there's no comedy to be had, I guess. Like, you could say, like, their interactions with each other. No. But, no. Come on.
Any final thoughts here on Matrice?
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is that I think it's okay. I actually didn't mind watching it, so I think people could run home with that comment.
Cool.
Right?
Good. Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
After the break, we're going to go find RJ a dickhole to go along with his other.
A what?